Pick up a modern bottle of root beer and read the label carefully. Somewhere between the sugar and the carbonation, you'll almost always find the same quiet phrase, artificial flavor. But root beer was never meant to be artificial. There was a time, not so long ago, when that deep, creamy, slightly medicinal taste came from a real tree growing across North America. A tree so common that farmers barely noticed it pushing up along fence lines. A tree children climbed, herbalists revered, and soda makers built fortunes upon. That tree was sassafras. If you had tasted root beer before the 1960s, you would remember something modern versions can't quite replicate: a warm, spicy sweetness with hints of vanilla, citrus, and earth. It didn't taste manufactured, it tasted alive. Then, almost overnight, the flavor vanished. No slow decline, no gradual reformulation, just silence. The reason? A compound hidden inside the tree's aromatic oil called safrole. Scientists began raising alarms, regulators stepped in, and within a few short years, the ingredient that defined an entire industry was banned from food. But the story didn't end there. Decades later, safrole gained an even darker reputation, not just a suspected carcinogen, but a chemical precursor linked to the production of illegal drugs. Suddenly, the Humby backyard tree carried the shadow of federal attention. So how did a medicinal plant become contraband adjacent? How did a national flavor turn into a regulatory ghost? Today, we're opening the Garden Lore Vault to uncover the full story, from indigenous medicine to soda fountains, from scientific panic to legal gray zones. Because sassafras isn't just a tree. It's a reminder that what we consider safe, dangerous, or even normal can change faster than we think. And once a flavor disappears, it rarely comes back.
Long before soda fountains and glass bottles, sassafras was already famous. For many indigenous peoples of eastern North America, this tree was more than a plant. It was a pharmacy rooted in the forest. The bark was brewed into teas, the roots into tonics, and the fragrant wood into remedies believed to purify the blood, ease fevers, and restore strength after long winters. European settlers quickly noticed. By the 1600s, sassafras had become one of the first botanical exports shipped back to Europe. At one point, it was so prized that bundles of the root were worth their weight in silver. Physicians prescribed it enthusiastically, often without fully understanding what it did, only that people swore by it. But sassafras wasn't destined to remain medicine. It was destined to become a flavor. Enter Charles Hyers, a Philadelphia pharmacist with a talent for marketing and impeccable timing. In 1876, at the Centennial Exposition, he introduced a beverage made from roots and herbs, including sassafras, and called it root tea. The name didn't sell, so he changed one word. Tea became beer, a term that felt hearty, working class, and distinctly American. The drink contained no alcohol, but the branding worked like magic. Root beer exploded in popularity. Soon, soda fountains across the country were pouring dark, foamy glasses topped with creamy heads. Families drank it as a temperance alternative to alcohol. Children associated it with treats and summer afternoons. Pharmacies promoted it as both refreshing and mildly healthful, a rare combination that built enormous trust. For decades, sassafras wasn't controversial. It was nostalgic, patriotic even, a native tree that helped define the taste of America. No one suspected that the very oil giving root beer its soul would one day erase it from the recipe entirely. Because history often moves like a forest, slow, quiet, until one study changes everything. For nearly a century, sassafras enjoyed a spotless reputation. It was natural, traditional, and woven into American culture.
But in the late 1950s, science began asking a new question, not whether something had been used safely in the past, but whether it could be proven safe under laboratory scrutiny. At the center of the investigation was Safrole, the aromatic compound responsible for sassafras's unmistakable scent and flavor. Researchers isolated the oil and conducted controlled feeding studies on lab rats. The doses were enormous, far beyond anything a human would normally consume, but the results were impossible to ignore. Many of the animals developed liver tumors. By 1960, the Food and Drug Administration made a decisive move. Safrole was officially classified as a carcinogen and banned from commercially produced foods and beverages. And just like that, traditional root beer died. Manufacturers had no choice but to reformulate. Synthetic flavorings replaced the natural extract. The color stayed the same, the foam remained convincing, but longtime drinkers swore the soul of the beverage had disappeared. Now here's where the story becomes more complicated. Critics later argued that the experimental doses were wildly unrealistic. Some calculations suggested a person would need to consume hundreds of gallons of old-style root beer in a single day to approach the levels given to the rats. So was the ban an overreaction? Not exactly. Regulators operate on a principle of prevention. If a compound shows strong carcinogenic potential, even under extreme conditions, it doesn't belong in the food supply. The risk may have been theoretical, but the consequences were too severe to gamble on. And there was another factor quietly shaping policy: the 1958 Delaney Clause, a law stating that any substance shown to cause cancer in animals could not be added to food, no matter how small the dose. No exceptions, no debates about probability. The law was blunt, but it was clear. So the original formula vanished almost overnight, and an entire generation grew up never knowing what authentic root beer tasted like. Yet the strangest twist was still ahead, because Safrole wasn't just a health concern. Soon it would become a law enforcement concern too. If the story had ended with the FDA ban, sassafras would simply be remembered as a nostalgic casualty of modern safety standards. But chemistry had other plans. As underground drug laboratories expanded in the late 20th century, authorities discovered something unsettling. Safrole oil could be chemically transformed into MDMA, commonly known as ecstasy. That single connection changed everything. Almost overnight, sassafras shifted from a forgotten soda ingredient to a monitored chemical resource. Government agencies began regulating safrole as a controlled precursor, meaning large-scale extraction, distribution, or possession could trigger serious legal consequences. International efforts even targeted illegal harvesting operations in parts of Southeast Asia, where related trees were stripped from forests to supply black market labs. Now let's clarify something important. The tree itself is not illegal. You can grow sassafras, admire it, even plant it intentionally as a native species. The legal danger begins when chemistry enters the picture. Distilling the essential oil, especially in significant quantities, crosses from gardening into regulated chemical processing. At that point, authorities are no longer looking at a hobbyist experimenting with roots. They may see the early stages of drug manufacturing infrastructure. Even attempting extraction without proper licensing can invite scrutiny you absolutely don't want. And this is where many foragers get confused. You'll sometimes hear people say, "My grandparents made sassafras tea and lived to 90. That may be true. Small traditional preparations occupy a murky historical space. But modern law focuses less on nostalgia and more on potential misuse. So the safest approach is simple. Appreciate the plant for its ecological and historical value, not as a DIY chemistry project, because few things escalate faster than unintentionally stepping into regulated territory. The irony is almost poetic. A tree once brewed for children's soda floats now appears in the same regulatory conversations as synthetic narcotics, from pharmacy shelves to federal watch lists. And yet, despite all this controversy, sassafras still grows quietly along woodland edges, recognizable to anyone who knows exactly what to look for.
So after all this history, the rise, the ban, the legal drama, you might be wondering, what does this infamous tree actually look like? Because chances are you've walked right past one without realizing it. Sassafras is not rare. In many regions of North America, it grows along forest edges, old fields, roadside clearings, and disturbed soils. It's a pioneer species, the kind of tree that moves in first when nature begins reclaiming abandoned land. But what makes sassafras truly unforgettable is its leaves. Most trees stick to one shape. Sassafras gives you three, sometimes on the very same branch. First, the simplest form, an oval leaf, smooth-edged, almost ordinary. Second, the famous one, the mitten. One side bulges outward like a thumb, making the leaf look exactly like a winter glove. And third, the rarest shape, the three-lobed leaf, often described as looking like a tiny ghost with outstretched arms. Oval, mitten, ghost. Once you see them together, identification becomes almost effortless. No other native tree displays this trio so consistently. But there's another giveaway, one you don't even need your eyes for. Snap a small twig. Immediately, a sweet citrus aroma rises from the break. Many people compare it to lemon candy, fruit cereal, or old-fashioned soda. That scent is safrole, the same compound that built an industry and later triggered its collapse. In autumn, sassafras becomes even easier to spot. The foliage turns blazing shades of orange, scarlet, and gold, all at once, making the tree look like it's lit from within. Still, admiration should come with restraint. This is a tree to recognize, photograph, maybe even plant, not experiment on. Because understanding a species is very different from trying to process it.
The story of sassafras is not really about a tree. It's about how culture, science, and regulation can collide, and how something beloved can vanish almost overnight. For generations, this plant flavored America. It stood at the crossroads of medicine, tradition, and industry. Then one laboratory discovery rewrote its destiny. Was the ban overly cautious? Some people still argue that today. But history shows a familiar pattern. When public health and uncertainty meet, regulators choose the safer road, even if it means sacrificing nostalgia. And sassafras became a ghost flavor. Yet the tree never disappeared. It still grows quietly in the wild, asking for nothing, continuing the same biological story it began long before soda fountains or federal agencies existed. There's a lesson in that. Not every plant is meant to be used just because it can be found. Sometimes the wisest relationship with nature is observation, not extraction. Learn it, recognize it, respect it. But don't try to recreate 1876 in your kitchen. Some knowledge belongs in books, some flavors belong in history, and some plants remind us that progress always comes with a price. So next time you pick up a bottle labeled artificially flavored, remember, you're tasting the echo of a tree that once defined an entire era. If you enjoy uncovering the hidden histories of plants, the celebrated, the misunderstood, and the forbidden, make sure you subscribe and step deeper into the vault. And now I'm curious, did you ever taste traditional-style root beer, or were you born into the age of the replacement? Tell me in the comments.